sculptures of foxes, snakes, vultures, boars, and humanoid creatures atop carved pillars. The significance was initially recognized by Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who had been in charge of the excavation for many years. Farmers in the area had discovered engraved stones before Klaus's 1990s arrival, while working to clear their fields, but nobody gave them any credit for their efforts. The idea was rejected by Klaus. Upon first glance, he recognized what they had found. No, these weren't the ruins of a city. They were a more sophisticated and ancient item. In their meticulous excavation, Klaus and his colleagues uncovered layer upon layer of artfully carved stone, neatly organized with startling accuracy. Two major T-shaped pillars were encircled by smaller ones in each enclosure. Carved sockets in the limestone bedrock supported the pillars, indicating that the builders possessed some familiarity with the concepts of calculation, planning, and permanency. The next step was to bury the enclosures on purpose. Each circle was eventually filled with debris, stones the size of fists, pieces of tools, and animal bones, likely after decades or even centuries of usage. The deed of interment wasn't haphazard. That was intentional. Goeclete wasn't even constructed yet. Because of the seal, it remained sealed for a very long time. Excavation had only reached a limited extent when Klaus died in 2014. Only around 10% of the projected foundations have been found. What has emerged from the earth so far, however, has shocked historians and archaeologists. It is said that Gobec Leepe was the first temple in the world. Some think it is the world's first known house of worship. No matter what we call it, one thing is obvious. We don't yet know why the builders were so focused, driven, and skilled, but their end goal was to build something greater than themselves. Turkish archaeologists have since taken over the excavations, in collaboration with the German Archaeological Institute. With each successive season, additional mysteries have been unveiled. Yet, the significance of the location has remained constant. It suggests that meaning, ritual, ceremony, and belief may have preceded farming. Perhaps religion came first, rather than agriculture. A larger archaeological zone called the Taş Teller area has recently included Goeclite Tepe. Multiple additional locations within that zone share these characteristics, including T-shaped pillars. In southeastern Turkey, you can find community layouts and carved creatures. They all lend credence to the impression that this was far from an isolated incident. That was a system of values. Even with all the discoveries, the story's most shocking aspect may still be the undiscovered parts. Features unseen for thousands of years exist beneath the surface, under layers of compacted dirt and purposefully sealed enclosures. This is only the tip of the iceberg. The most recent season of digging has proven, not simply confirmed, that, particularly, one discovery has rendered scientists dumbfounded. An ancient, carved cavern that has been untouched by humans for millennia. Delving further, tools beyond shovels and brushes are used by modern-day Gobec archaeologists. Due to the site's depth, complexity, and significance, each layer must be carefully examined prior to being disturbed. In this case, cutting-edge imaging and surveying equipment are useful. Researchers employ ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity surveys, and magnetometry to create underground maps of potential subsurface features before excavating a single rock. During the most recent field seasons, these technologies were important in reducing the number of potential excavation targets. Focusing on anomalies, areas where readings reveal cracks in the bedrock, dense groups of stone, or traces of artificial construction, instead of excavating large trenches at random, is what teams do. Underneath the most promising regions, our surveys uncovered cavities and characteristics that did not correspond to any enclosures that had been investigated before. Drone photogrammetry provides a high-resolution record of the surface before actual excavation begins. Researchers have a digital record of the site's history thanks to 3D models created by stitching together photos. Get ready before they start. When trying to piece together the movement of soil layers and the placement of stones in the past, that information will be useful. The pace of the procedure decreases significantly once excavation begins. Goeclete Tepe has severely compacted earth that is combined with limestone, skeletal remains, and shards of various tools, partially laid down by nature, and partly as a result of human hands. Each team works in a tiny unit, excavating dirt in thin layers no deeper than a few yards. Everything that is taken out is sorted and stored. Micro-remains, burned seeds, pollen, and ash residues can be detected by taking soil samples from strategic locations. The crew recently made an unusual logistical maneuver in the course of their work. Olive trees were temporarily moved from areas of the hill that were too close to potential hazards. Trees like these weren't always there. In fact, they were planted there a few decades ago. By relocating them, we were able to reach areas that had been unexplored for thousands of years and save the vegetation for when we replanted. The process of avoiding harm during that one stage alone required environmental consultants and dragged on for weeks. Under the direction of archaeologist Necmi Karl, who is being supervised by Turkish officials, the dig is being conducted. Earlier teams championed a scientific and cautious approach, and Necmi has continued it. Public reports and live field events are two further ways he has contributed to more openness. New information. To prevent prematurely revealing buildings, the excavation strategy has been fine-tuned under his direction. This ensures that the team will only go into deeper features when they have confirmed they are stable and will not collapse while being worked on. During this stage, a portable laser is among the more advanced instruments employed. Image reader. It is immediately scanned in 3D as soon as a new layer or architectural detail is revealed. Researchers will still have a complete digital record that is exact to within millimeters, even if stones collapse or weather over time. Lately, these models have shifted from not just for academic purposes, but also to build copies and formulate preservation strategies. Vertical profiling is also employed in a large portion of the current research. This necessitates the use of narrow shafts dug through the site as opposed to broad trenches. This method enables archaeologists to continue stratigraphy with greater care, particularly in locations where structures might have been intentionally reused or buried. Rather than being gradually buried by time, these vertical profiles have helped prove that some enclosures were filled in purposely using layers of rock and dirt. Specifically, in an area close to the southern, readings revealed an anomalous shape buried fewer than 5 feet below the surface of the mound. Its layout did not correspond to any known enclosure. This oddity appeared to have been carved into the bedrock rather than constructed on top of it, in contrast to the T-shaped pillars. The squad, however, decided against charging in. After investing weeks into establishing protective barriers and stabilizing the area, the decision was successful. What was about to be revealed would cast doubt on long-held beliefs on the utilization of space at Göbekli Tepe and the reasons behind the extreme measures taken to conceal it. Indications of a concealed area. Gobec isn't the place where every discovery starts with some observable object. A piece that doesn't quite fit can be the starting point. Researchers found a spot on the mound where the ground had shifted in a certain way in one area of the site. There was no discernible framework, no shards of pillars, no stone wall design. The terrain, however, was remarkably flat in some places and abnormally hard in others. It appeared ordinary to the unaided eye. Even little shifts in the earth can prompt seasoned archaeologists to dig further. The most striking feature of this area stood out from the neighboring areas in terms of the absence of biological detritus. In other parts of Goeclete, you can find ash layers, animal bones, shards of stone, and other loose debris on the ground. In contrast, the earth here was compact and devoid of the typical unevenness. Such meticulous preservation at a historic site, not often found and frequently made up. This area had been disturbed and subsequently resealed. At a depth of approximately 2 feet, the soil color changed dramatically as excavation started. Eventually, a lighter limestone dust, similar to what would be found near bedrock, replaced the darker compact fill. What followed, though, was an even bigger shock to the squad. The point where a straight, precisely carved edge meets the ground, resembling the corner of a tombstone. It appeared, at first glance, to be a salvaged pillar component, perhaps one that had recently fallen and been obscured. However, the form was incorrect. The shape was not circular, not a swaying motion. It seemed to go on forever, was square, and had clean carvings. Excavation uncovered additional information in a matter of days. A severely created a narrow aperture that can be barely squeezed through, encircled by stone on all sides. There wasn't a freestanding construction here, unlike the huge pillars observed elsewhere. The carving went straight into the rock. The hill itself comprised the stone. The crew had unearthed what appeared to be the upper border of a rectangular structure that was completely new to them. Just under 2.5 feet in height, and around 2 feet broad, was the entrance. Its inside was smooth, and its edges were sharp. Faint relief is seen to the left of the entrance. Sculptures began to surface. Angular forms and curving lines that resembled stylized limbs. These marks were done on purpose. They weren't accidental. The design, according to one team member, was nearly reminiscent of a niche or recessed doorway. Some have speculated that it may have been symbolic, signifying a change or transition even though it didn't actually lead somewhere. However, certainty was elusive. Soil compacted tightly around the excavated region, while the space behind it remained unexplored. On its own, that was peculiar. At Goeclete, the majority of the features that have been discovered were either lying on the ground or were partially covered by rubble. Every one of them was unique. After being sliced and sculpted, it was concealed. It looked like it had never been inside any of the spheres. By itself it stood. By this point, the prevailing belief among the archaeologists was that they had discovered a chamber, not a typical room with piled stone walls, but a pit cut directly into the hillside. Due to the carving's accuracy, the relief's placement, and the surrounding undisturbed earth, indicated a building that had been purposefully sealed off soon after it was finished. The fact that there was zero movement above it added to its mystique. There were no visible trench markings or fill that suggested a repair. Everything that had been accomplished here had been executed meticulously, and then, for many centuries without being touched. Everyone on the crew stopped digging now. Experts in conservation and structural analysis were brought in to assess the chamber's stability before proceeding. How far it went, or what might be behind the chiseled entrance, were both mysteries. If you dig too fast, the building could collapse or the contents could be damaged. The anticipation and the accompanying pressure was building, according to team insiders. They were aware that what they were beholding was extraordinary. A slash chamber at Gobec Leepe has never been heard about before. This enclosure, in contrast to the open-air ones with their distinctive pillars, seemed purposefully closed, as if its previous occupants had wished to preserve whatever was within. They meticulously scanned the entrance, recording every inch. Debris and compacted dirt impeded their view of the inside area, despite their best efforts with microcameras aimed at the opening. Whatever was within had remained hidden from our times. Although the exact nature of their discovery was still a mystery to the crew, they were certain of this. Their gaze was fixed on An underground room with intricate carvings that is completely unique from everything else unearthed there. And the time would soon arrive to unlock it. At this very time. With great care and slowness, the crew started to clear the area around the carved stone surface of any trash. None were found. Ways around this now. It was necessary to record and sort each handful of dirt extracted from the entrance cavity. Little pieces of charcoal, bone chips, or flint could change the whole story. Something deliberate seemed to be going on with the carved frame, and everyone was wary for fear of unlocking a previously sealed feature. The rectangular door stood fully exposed after nearly a week of clearing surrounding it. Digging at Gobec Leepe had clearly revealed a chamber that had rendered the scientists speechless. The width of the chamber was approximately 2 feet, and the height was somewhat under 2.5 feet. Filled with fine silt and loose stone fragments, the inside remained sealed. It wasn't only the entrance, though, that grabbed everyone's eye. As the dust settled, the etched symbols stood out more clearly. The bent arm of one image and the looping curve of another, which might be an abstract figure or a coiled animal, were the most striking features. The carvings could not be positively identified at this time, but they did fit in with the site's overall symbolic design. Behind the entryway is the internal space. Was rather small. It appeared more like a niche than a full-sized room, as reported to colleagues later by archaeologist Leclerc, one of the project's top advisors. In contrast to the symbolic niches typically seen in enclosure walls, this one was set into the very rock itself. No, it wasn't for show. Structure was the issue. The form of the room was revealed by meticulously removing the final fill. It had a 3-foot back and was just tall enough to fit a crouch inside. A small shelf had been installed along the rear wall, been sculpted to a width of 18 inches and a height of 8 inches. The ledge appeared to have been sculpted by hand tools due to its flawless surface. On top of it, the ceiling had a little inward slope, creating a cramped, enclosed area. The group withdrew as soon as they noticed the room was vacant. The size wasn't out of the ordinary. Although it did not contain any gold or other goods, the air surrounding the find did undergo a transformation. Quietness spoke louder than words ever could. Unexpected as it may seem, this new function added to a site that had already altered global perspectives on prehistory. It is. Nothing else in Gobec had pointed to a room like this. Throughout, the enclosures remained elevated. Open to the sky were the pillars. Faces outward were the carvings. This new feature was a complete reversal of fortune. Inwardly sliced seal, no. Well-lit entryway, with the ground leveled out instead of the sky above. The project's head archaeologist, Nexmikaru of Turkey, promptly summoned conservation specialists. They made sure there weren't any big cracks or instability in the stone by inspecting the room walls. Scientists were able to temporarily access the area with the use of portable lighting and surface scanners because of this. While they did not find any particularly important relics there, they did find details that made them wonder. Carved into the right wall was a small depression about 4 inches square and 2 inches deep. Its function remained mysterious. A deliberate effort had been made to smooth the floor of the chamber. There weren't any stains, burns, or charring on the back ledge. No evidence of a fire or dead person was found inside. It had been cleansed, if it were an altar. There must have been some use before sealing it if it was a symbolic seat. The entry to the room gave the impression of a false gateway, like those etched into the walls of Egyptian tombs, thought to serve as a passageway for the soul from the outside. However, anything even somewhat like Gobec Leepe existed thousands of years before it. The team was not amused by that similarity. As of yet, assertions could not be made. A consensus, however, was reached by everybody. This strongly suggests that the chamber's presence here was not coincidental. The crew had already scanned the entire room and its environs in 3 dimensions. Scans revealed exact alignment with adjacent features, including an east-pointing stone alignment in particular. Whether that detail is coincidental is debatable, but for a group that had spent years meticulously recording every aspect of this location, it hinted that the chamber had been strategically positioned. What the chamber contained was not the most remarkable aspect. What made it stand out from the rest of the slope was its uniqueness. Clutched away. The deal was done. Carving, not assembly, was the process. Neither casual entry nor distant viewing were intended. Additionally, it shattered every single architectural pattern that had previously characterized Goeclete. The crew had opened a previously unattainable space after months of measuring, planning, and waiting. For over 10,000 years, nobody has peered inside. Their discovery proved that no matter how mysterious Gobec Leepe is, there are still aspects we weren't expecting to see. Archaeological revelations. Researchers proceeded once the preliminary chamber documentation was finished, assessing the significance of its existence. The absence of artifacts didn't stop the design and context from raising serious concerns. There were no indications of regular or casual use of the sealed building, which was carved into the bedrock. Just for that reason, it distinctive from the majority of the artifacts unearthed at Gobec. The carved bench-like ledge into the rear wall was the most striking interior feature. Nearly 8 feet tall, it jutted out from the wall a little more than 18 inches. From a practical standpoint, the measurements didn't indicate any seating. The ceiling slanted downward, making it impossible to sit up straight, and there was no space to move around. As a result, one theory emerged. Objects, rather than humans, might have been placed on the ledge. This would be in harmony with the space's symbolic or ceremonial purpose. To the functionality of other sections of the website. Enclosures A, B, and D all showcase circular formations of carved T-shaped pillars, which were probably used for ritual purposes. On the other hand, there were no carved wall panels, freestanding statues, or vertical pillars in this room, with the exception of a couple of weak sculptures in relief next to the entryway. That is why its understatement is every bit as captivating as a complex design. Porthole stones, which are circular or rectangular holes cut into stone slabs and typically placed in enclosure walls, were compared by certain members of the crew to the arrangement discovered elsewhere on the site. These probably served as symbolic entrances or passageways between different areas. The rectangular chamber's concealed location and shape imply that the builders may have gone beyond the porthole concept in this instance. A real, carved-out opening into which something or someone was supposed to pass, stay put, and never come back. It was also important where the chamber was located. It stood alone on the hillside, far from any other dug enclosures. It wasn't just a branch off of something else, that much was clear. Alone it stood, on purpose sealed and removed from the others. That prompted a different line of thinking. The room may have functioned as a sacred treasury. At other ancient locations, sacrifices, symbolic implements, or even human remains were placed in tiny carved niches or holes lined with stones. However, that area wasn't filled, unlike the others. Before the room was sealed, anything that had been placed there was either removed or decayed away undetectable. The spotless interior of the chamber, the flawless surface, and one insider's observation of the excavation team's work. It appears to have been used only once based on the surfaces, the undisturbed ledge, and the absence of any post-construction traces. That is consistent with the notion that the chamber served more as a symbol than a practical space. Site designated for creation, utilization, and ultimate interment. After comparing three-dimensional representations of the room that shares characteristics with Goeclete and nearby locations, such as Kara Tepe. There was no match. The room did not conform to any established norm. No one had ever seen anything like it. According to the researchers, it was that singularity that rendered them speechless. On a website, amidst the grand grandeur and breathtaking craftsmanship, there was a concealed chamber that held immense significance. It prompted an awkward but inevitable inquiry. There must be something else hidden beneath the hill if this has been there for over 1,000 years and no one has found it. What happens? The archaeologists' approach to the site was immediately altered after the chamber was discovered. A new structure was not the only thing that the find added to Goeclete's layout. It made us rethink what the site could have offered from the start. The next week, in other areas that were supposed to be excavated, the head archaeologist, Karl, put a brief halt. A complete subsurface survey of the area surrounding the chambers was instead prioritized. Thus, the team reallocated resources accordingly. More seismic testing, ground-penetrating radar, and resistivity measurements were part of it. Covers a wider area in its surveys. Their discovery was nuanced yet consequential. Indications of further potential fissures in the bedrock, but faint. Smaller, without pillars, but of a depth and extent comparable to the room that had been shown. We have designated these anomalies for future excavation, but they haven't been excavated yet. Time of year. An additional element of complexity to the site's interpretation is introduced by the concept that Goeclete may include carved interior features in addition to surface structures. So far, the animal reliefs, towering T-shaped pillars, and enormous circular enclosures have been the main attractions. In most people's minds, these are the icons that represent the website. Builders weren't limited to gazing upwards or outwards, though, as the chamber demonstrates. They were chiseling away at the stone with intent as well. The ramifications for culture hold great importance. The chamber's possible function in an airy context lends credence to the idea that Goeclete served as more than only a location for celebrations, rituals, and feasts. It may have also served as a site of rest and burial. More nuanced religious ideas may be revealed if it served as a repository for symbols or a gift, including clandestine devotional activities performed away from the prying eyes of the general public. What do you anticipate its final form to be, then? Post a comment and tell us. When Jonathan passed away, Gregory was on vacation in France. He expressed regret for not being in Los Angeles in subsequent interviews. He thought Jonathan might have tried to get in touch with him if he were at home. As Gregory put it, "My regret that I'll live with for the rest of my life was that I was in France instead of here." In other words, the guilt never really went away for him. While he was playing, he couldn't stop thinking about what else he could have done, pondering the potential outcomes again and over. The pain of his loss, according to his wife Veronique, almost killed him. He persisted only because his family loved him. Ever since that moment, Gregory has grown more reflective and reserved, cognizant of the precarious nature of happiness. Gregory was utterly devastated by Jonathan's death for 2 long years. All offers to act were declined. Sleep eluded him. He was plagued by nightmares. There were times when he did nothing and sat still for hours. His loved ones speculated that he may have sought out mental health treatment at that period. It seems as though nothing could calm him. Tony Peake, Gregory's younger son, has his own personal demon to battle. Tony fought alcoholism throughout the 90s. Even his marriage to supermodel Cheryl Tiegs was a source of sadness for him. According to Tony, he felt self-conscious and uncomfortable. At 45 years of age, he appeared exhausted. He damaged his father-son relationship, marriage, and health with his drinking. It was a wake-up call when he and Cheryl separated in 1995. Tony came clean about his illness, which caused him to act destructively. He claimed that his erratic conduct put his loved ones to the test. Even though Tony was troubled by the loss of his brother, he discovered a means to return. Sobriety was his goal after the divorce. With the hope of starting over, he even co-wrote a screenplay. Gregory stuck with Tony no matter what. He vowed never to lose another kid after Jonathan's death. "My dad has always been there for me," Tony said. At least once, Gregory went above and beyond just being complimentary. At Tony's side, he offered support and encouragement as he put his life back together. Gregory learned the importance of being there during the worst times from the agony of losing Jonathan. The affection Tony had for his father was the catalyst for his transformation. Like the respect he displayed in his film roles, Gregory's devotion to his family was genuine. A remarkable return to Gregory's career occurred in 1976. He played a father who learns his son is the Antichrist in the 60-year-old film The Omen. The picture premiered in 516 theaters on June 25, 1976. It set a new record for 20th Century Fox that weekend, earning $427 million. In the United States alone, it made approximately $60 million, or over $330 million in today's dollars. Hey there, Gregory was smart to take the deal. 10% of the gross plus $250,000 up front. With 2 Oscar nominations and a triumph for its eerie score, The Omen brought him fame to an entirely new generation. The 87-year-old Gregory Peak passed away on June 12, 2003. He slept soundly in his Los Angeles residence. Veronique, his 48-year married wife, was standing at his side. As he drew his final breath, she cradled his hand. Many others paid tribute after hearing the news. His memorial was attended by almost 1,000 individuals. Harrison Ford, Michael Jackson, Lauren Beale, and Harry Belafonte were among the famous people that showed up. Gregory was cherished by all for more than his acting chops. He was also known for his kindness and integrity.